Well, sorry I wasn't there last time. It's okay. It was a no-show. We got forgotten last time, so we're doing a second attempt. Oh, I was forgotten. I was forgotten, so we rescheduled for today. It happens. See, it worked out perfectly because now you're here and you are not here yesterday. So it's like it's fate. Oh, what? Okay. Let's see. Oh, wow. Okay, now it suddenly jumped to... Jesus Christ. Now this video has had a sudden jump in views. Wow. Fido. Fido. Let's see. Debate Fido instead. I'll see. I lost all of my debates to Fido. It's no use. Debate Fido instead. One moment. I'm gonna check up on Fido. Be right back. Don't go anywhere. Oh my god. Be right back. Dog, yeah. Also go to the side page or something. That's the best thing to do. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Invite your friends, family, colleagues, and etc. Alright, we'll be trying to defeat the enemy until the thing starts. We'll be doing the right thing to do. Trying to beat. Wait, where's the sound? Oh, muted. Okay. Alright. Was the lucky guess? I was like, is it jazz? No, wait, pop. Wait, what are we? What are we talking about? We'll see. We'll see what we'll end up talking about. Socialism and political violence. We're going to be debating on whether or not Charlie Kirk was a socialist. That's the ticket. How's that for a topic? Was Charlie Kirk a socialist? Why the question marks? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It would have been a topic though, wouldn't it? I just made up the best topic ever and everybody's shocked. No, it was a joke about the topic of conversation being was Charlie Kirk a socialist? Ugh. Popcorn? We'll try to beat the enemy. Oh, it's time, I think. Oh my god. Yes. I started stream. Okay, I guess we're gonna have our talk. Perfect. Perfection. Perfection. Right. It's about to happen, actually.
Danger.
Look at that.
Careful, Mael.
Oh. I was about to say that because I was about to say that my parry game was on point, but it's as bad as ever. What? What are you... What? What are you doing? What are you people doing? I'm not playing balloons. Be right back. I have to check up on something. Don't go anywhere. Right. I'm waiting to be called at this point. In the meantime, we're gonna revive the party.
Still need your help.
Yes, I still need your help. You worthless
Again.
piece of crap. You worthless man.
Careful, Bozo. Ready to carry.
Oh, I was ready to parry. What do you know? For once. Aha. Attempt 2? Well, attempt 2 because attempt number 1 did not work out, did it? My guess was a no-show. Attempt 1 was unsuccessful, and so this is an attempt 2. Makes sense, no?
Ready to strike.
Because the person I was supposed to talk to did not show up.
I've got this.
Take cover.
Psychological advantage. That is true. It's okay. It's not hard to have a psychological advantage over me. That's not a difficult feat to achieve.
Better.
I missed the parry.
I'm ready. Ready to
I
evade.
wish I didn't, but you know, it is what it is. Welcome back, Jack, my goat. Oh my god. Ah! And now I died. Now I'm dead. Was so taken aback by this Jack, my goat comment that I just died. First it was balloons, now it's songs. At least the chat is lively. As long as the chat is lively, I'm happy. Press like. Or I will arrest you. Hello, lettuce. There was always songs and balloons. Should I just play balloons on stream? Is that what you're trying to tell me? In a very unsubtle way. Fido! We're talking about 80s German pub bands, Lucy. Which ones? Eastern or Western? So how's the convo? The first time didn't work? Yeah, because there was a no-show. The person I was supposed to talk to didn't show. I hope the mod who timed you out isn't here. Zoshelix does not seem to be here right now, no.
God, you guys pissed me off today.
Hello, hello.
I know it's not my regular chat. It's a bunch of fucking DGG Civil War fucking LARPing dickheads.
Oh,
You
okay.
guys really did get under my skin today.
Hold on. I'm gonna...
If the goal was to make me angry, you have succeeded.
Can you hear
Made
me?
me angry. I mean, I'm always angry, but
Fido.
you know. Obtuse, you calling us fat?
Fido.
Stop hurting me. Stop hurting me. Stop hurting my feelings. Republicans would run out of money and equipment, laugh my ass off. You guys are so fucking stupid. We should never get that far.
Can you hear me?
Plague Doctor says, as a vet myself, shit kicks off. I'm moving the family to Canada. I'll do anything for my kids to be raised in peace. Yep. Maybe if I think that there's somebody who's actually fighting for the Republic of the United States, then I will take my family to Canada, and then I will join the side that I think is actually fighting for the United States. If no one's fighting for the United States, if it's far left militia versus far right militia, I'm not staying. I'll let you guys kill each other. I'll move back when it's done. Hi, Lucy. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
I see audio on your end, but it's not playing for me. I'm going to go into voice and video settings, and I'm going to... I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah?
I can hear you now.
All right. Hold on, I have to turn off the camera in one place and turn it back on in a different place, if that makes sense.
No problem. Somebody says, knives of the round. How do I train in Illinois? I lost my rifle in a boating accident right before the ban. You train with everything else. So you train with bolts, you train with levers, you train with revolvers, you train with semi-autos with 10-round magazines. You train with whatever's available. You can still train fundamental marksmanship. You can still train room clearing. You can still train all that stuff. So.
Okay, I'm on.
All right, cool. Let me go ahead and bring you on screen. So Lucy Hayes.
Or Haza. But it's
we had
dealer's choice.
We had a mutual friend that introduced us. Can you tell the chat who you are and what you're about and what we're going to be discussing today?
Yes. Lucy Haza, biggest Polish trans streamer. Political.
The biggest Polish trans streamer.
Yes. That does.
Okay, nice.
That does.
And then are you in Poland?
I am in Poland right now, yes. I'm in Warsaw right now. But I'll be going to Ukraine soon.
Okay, cool. And what are we going to be talking about today?
It's dealer's choice, really. We could be talking about socialism, because I think it has been given a bit of a bad rep. From my perspective.
I mean, if you want to, obviously what we're talking about or what's hot right now is obviously the Charlie Kirk assassination.
We can definitely...
For me, I'm perfectly capable of or perfectly willing to talk about socialism because you're saying it's getting a bad rap.
Yeah.
I think it deserves to get a bad rap. So why am I wrong?
Because it conflates socialism with Bolshevism.
So how do you define socialism?
As trying to uplift the thing that you would call as working class to work towards a better situation for themselves, broadly speaking. It sounds very vague, but that is what it is.
No, it is. But what's funny is I had a socialist person correct me recently where they were saying that they were like, oh, you're wrong about socialism. Please check out this 2-hour video. And the 2-hour video was talking about all the non-Marxist socialism, like pre-Marxian socialism. And the definition that I did think that incorporated all of them was emancipating, so setting free the working class from the oppressions of capitalism. And I think that included all kinds of socialism. But then what do you say to people like me who say that's so vague that includes the Scandinavian system, and Scandinavians do not call themselves socialists?
Well, I suppose it always, like even the Polish socialists, who I'm quoting, would say that the label isn't even that important. The important is the effect, what you want to achieve. The process, the goal is important, not really if you're labeling yourself as this or that. I guess that would be the answer.
Then follow-up question. So the way that I understand Marxist socialism is that it's a decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production. So do you want to decommodify basic human needs? Do you want workers to own the means of production?
I would like the workers to own the means of production, yeah. It was even tried in Poland after 1989, but it was not planned out very well and did not end well.
Well, and then that's actually what I was going to ask. So for my argument against that is going to be the fact that any kind of state that is willing and able to guarantee food, housing, shelter, and water, which is a decommodification of basic human needs, and then also able to enforce. Now, maybe this is like alien to a European, but a state that's big enough to enforce that every enterprise has employee ownership, that's going to be a massive state that is basically begging for authoritarian abuse.
Oh, that depends. Like it goes back to history. It goes back to history on how these things formed, of how socialists formed in Poland versus how socialists, well, communists more like, formed in the Soviet Union, how they interacted with one another. Are you familiar at all with the history of the region? Poland, well, what became the nation state of Poland, Ukraine, and Russia, Soviet Union?
I'll tell you, I have a historical gap for Eastern Europe, but what I would say is, at least on social media, a lot of what people crow about is that Poland, because of their experiences under the Soviet Union and effectively being conquered by both Germany and Russia and told that their country doesn't exist, that it seems like the right wing is quite hostile to both National Socialism and like Soviet socialism or Soviet communism.
Yeah, of course. I'm hostile to Soviet communism. My parents were in the anti-government opposition in the Solidarity movement, but my father was also a socialist. Interestingly enough, he was in the opposition, and then he went into politics as a socialist. So I guess you can see the interesting, seemingly contradiction there, right?
Well, I think the fear from me and from a lot of Americans is the fact that socialism and social democrats and people who pine after the Scandinavian model, oftentimes we feel like those are people who are hiding their power level, who secretly want to be Marxist, who secretly want to bring back the Soviet Union or Maoist China or that kind of thing. But I accept the fact that probably not every social democrat or every socialist who wants to emancipate the working class, maybe not all of them like authoritarianism. I think it's ideologically possible.
Right. Of course, let's put Marxism aside, because I think Marxism is a little bit of a separate topic from the Soviet Union. But interesting. I even have a prop here, a Polish book. Do you know what the title is? It's in Polish, but
socialist anti-communism.
Yeah, the anti-communism of the socialists. Isn't that interesting?
That actually is Polish streamer. I'm sorry, people are asking who you are, so I'm typing in Lucy Hayes, and but no, that is funny to me. But the reason why that's funny to me is because maybe you can describe it to me.
Yeah, I can just read you what's on the back cover.
It feels like there's a contradiction because Marx and Engels, they obviously use socialism and communism interchangeably. So it's funny to see a book that says...
It says anti-communist because this is the interesting part. In Poland, there was a socialist movement which was heavily on fighting for democracy, fighting for the sovereignty of Poland as a state, fighting for a system. The Polish socialists believed heavily that a system cannot be enforced from above to the below, that it has to be something that created from below above, that they believed in a parliamentary system through which the workers would emancipate themselves. They were heavily anti-vanguardism. They believed that it would lead to a oligarchical system, which would a police state basically. And so the socialist movement was fighting against the communist movement, which would be pro-Soviet Union, because Polish socialists saw basically the Soviet Union as just the Russian Empire in a socialist garb. And
that's really funny to me, because when you look at, so when you're talking about emancipation, right? So emancipation is freedom, right? And so when you're supposed to be freeing the working class from the oppressions of capitalism, the way that the Marxists thought about that was you're providing food, water, and shelter to people, and then you're also giving them ownership of the economy. But they argued that the ownership of the economy came through like the vanguard state and the government, right?
Yeah.
But then what ends up happening is they end up saying, well, you need to do this for the good of the communist nation. You need to do this for the good of the socialist nation. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to do this. You need to do that. Yeah. And so what happens is kind of like a new oligarchy a new monarchy, a new dictatorship, a new form of slavery or lack of emancipation.
Yeah.
And so what I used to get really mad when somebody said like, "Oh, well, real communism has never been tried." Because I didn't understand, like they're saying like, "Well, the ideals of the philosophy have never been fulfilled." Now, my argument though is that if you keep trying to make your philosophy manifest in the real world and it keeps resulting in disaster, at what point do you say, okay, maybe there's something flawed with these ideas?
Yeah, that was the idea of Bolshevism, that there needs to be started with Lenin. That was not, Marx did not really formulate the idea of the vanguard party per se, but that was Lenin, and that was something that the Polish socialists were very, very against. They believed that there has to be a multi-party system, and that within multi-party system, parliamentary system, the workers need to be educated about their rights. There was a very strong belief within the Polish socialists that violence on the streets, since we're talking about political violence, they really believe that this will not be achieved through violence on the streets, but rather through the parliamentary system.
Yeah, and I understand that. Some people, I have a lot of new people in my chat, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't understand that this was going to be a Hassan stream talking about socialism." To be clear, I'm not a socialist, okay? I think that mixed economy capitalism is decent at doing what humanity needs it to do. I think that if you decommodify basic human needs, I think that you're going to create some perverse incentive structures within the economy, then workers owning the means of production. I'm okay with it. Like, I'm okay if a private enterprise wants to do revenue share or profit share with its employees. I'm not principally opposed to it. As a matter of fact, I think the world would probably be a better place if more private enterprises considered that. However, I don't want to legally prohibit people from engaging in wage labor or engaging in entrepreneurial activities that don't have a profit share incentive. I think that profit share, while when a business is successful and lucrative, can be an incredible vehicle for people to generate incredible amounts of wealth. I do think that some financial institutions, some businesses are so complex that profit share and revenue share don't make sense.
Yeah, and also I would kind of make a case that the profit is a little bit of a perverse incentive, isn't it?
I mean, it is to a certain degree, but at the same time, so profit, just as an example. So we have somebody who I use like pencils as an example. So we have a guy who is taking graphite that's worth 10 cents.
Mm-hmm.
They take a stick of wood that's worth 10 cents. They combine the graphite and the pencil, and now that pencil is worth $1. Okay. So they have 80 cents of difference in price, I guess. It's not quite profit. But then let's say that he can do like 1,000 of those in an hour. I don't think that he's entitled to the full 80 cents of his labor per pencil.
I'm talking about a little bit something different when I talk of the perverse incentive of profit motive. I'm talking about a situation in which, let's go to video games. Is that okay?
Well, I don't even know if we need to go to video games, because if you're just saying that like capitalists ultimately incentivize profit to the detriment of all else, I'll probably just agree with you.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. That it ends up being a situation in which the company, for example, will not invest back into making the thing that they're doing better and better and better. They will just keep raking up the profit for the sake of the profit becomes the goal in itself. Does that make sense?
But that's what I would say is the role of the government, because we have a bunch of social services. Like I said, I'm a mixed economy capitalist. So the reason why I'm okay with a progressive tax structure is because I think the people who make shitloads of cash within a capitalist economy, they are the people who disproportionately benefit from the American military industrial complex. They disproportionately, benefit from having law enforcement that secures American roads. They disproportionately benefit from our trade infrastructure with the entire world. And so as a result, I don't have a problem with them being taxed at a higher percentage rate, particularly if they're living like kings. They can afford yachts and boats and jet skis and second families and third families. I don't really give a shit if somebody making more than $10 million a year is getting taxed at 35%. And so for me, it would be the government's job through taxation and social spending to and regulation to reinforce the things that make society function.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Worthy, yeah.
What else you got? You want to talk about Charlie Kirk getting murdered? You want to talk about the Ukrainian war? What else do you want to talk about?
Well, there are a couple of topics that we could be talking about. The Charlie Kirk thing, which is a hot topic right now.
I have a question. Is it hot in Poland? Like, so for instance, like, you know, American politics, we're obviously self-obsessed and we think that we're the center of the universe. So are you is it a hot topic in Poland?
I've been asking my mom if she heard about it, and she said no, so maybe not. But then again, I'm really tuned into these. My mom is much more tuned into the war, to be honest with you, than stuff like that. She reads articles about the war. She keeps up with the war. In that sense, she keeps up with American politics because Trump affects the war, but...
Well, let's do Charlie Kirk real quick, even if it's not popular in Poland.
It's popular for me, so I'm.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. So right now, Destiny and I, we haven't talked, but we probably will. I'm frustrated with his rhetoric because I think it's encouraging bad behavior in his audience. I think it's counterproductive. I think it's heated. His perspective, though, is that the right wing has been so abrasive, so gross, so violent. They've escalated the rhetoric so bad that the Democrats effectively should not apologize or not make any kind of concessions about political violence being bad, because until the right wing learns that, you know, to not engage in this behavior, you're rewarding their behavior. And I think this is actually quite stupid and quite dangerous. I think that you have to, in my opinion, be ready for diplomacy, but also be ready for conflict. And so you should always, if there's something like, do you condone the extra legal murder or assassination of Charlie Kirk? The obvious answer should be yeah.
Do I what? Sorry.
So do you condemn what happened to Charlie Kirk?
Oh yeah, of course.
Well, I'm not even asking you that question. I think the obvious answer, if you want to be politically viable, should be yes. And I think that if you refuse to condemn extra legal violence, you're giving your enemies ammunition.
I just don't think that it's... I've been in a very Grace Rishon panel recently about this topic. I just don't think... Well, first of all, I don't think we should be conflating different types of political violence. You agree with that, right?
Wait, sorry. Say that one more time, because that's probably
we should not be conflating different types of political violence, because I think that's important. Yeah. Because, for example, what Solidarity was doing, I mentioned Solidarity movement, right? The anti-government, those were not always peaceful, and they did engage in that type of political violence. I think we can understand that there's a big difference between that and just assassinating political opponents to resolve political differences. Yeah.
Well, and that's where, for me as well, if we were in a situation, because Donald Trump has engaged in escalatory rhetoric that I find absolutely reprehensible, if him and his base tried to install him as president for life, I would argue that, like, extra legal violence at that point, like let's say the federal government just decides, yeah, actually, you know what, fuck the Constitution, Donald Trump is president for life. I think at that point, even if it's illegal, violence is moral.
Yeah, like people trading,
like protests, rioting, and if the cops start shooting you, then you could probably justify
fight back. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, there's a big difference between that and just taking a gun and deciding this person has views different than me, so I just kill him. I don't think that should be a norm when anybody is fair game, basically.
Well, and I'm not going to lie, I'm holding my breath a little bit, because right now, so Turning Points USA was the college campus organization on the right wing that Charlie Kirk created. And there's a alternative, Democratic alternative that I'm friends with. Zico and Sanchez is running that. And it's called National Ground Game. And they're doing the Un-F America tour right now. And Steven is doing an indoor event on Thursday with a bunch of other left-wing creators. Now, I think because everything's so hot and people are so scared of going to jail or prison, that there's a 99% chance that everything's going to go fine. Security is going to be there. They're going to search everybody, all that kind of stuff.
I was
But
actually
I
really
would be
surprised.
lying.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I was saying I would be lying if I said that I wouldn't be surprised if somebody either physically attacked Steven or tried to kill Steven. I would not be surprised.
Hmm.
It's a small percentage chance, but it's entirely possible.
Yeah. I was actually kind of surprised at the security for the Charlie Kirk thing, that the roofs were so easily accessible. For me, that was a little bit of a surprising thing, to be quite honest with you.
Well, I didn't really think that there was a guy doing security who was standing there with his arms crossed and responded immediately. And I would think that, like, you know, I've gone to public events where I've been within, you know, like I've been out in the open and talking to people and all that kind of stuff. That wasn't really a problem. But I think that's because we didn't expect this to necessarily be the way that the game was going to be played. But now that the game was played this way, the question is whether or not it continues to be played this way.
It's a good question. I was also surprised. Well, not surprised, but I noted the reaction from very big right-wing pundits who would call for the upping of the temperature for violence without even knowing who the killer was, without even having the...
That was crazy to me. It seemed like there was about 2 or 3 hours of shock where people were just like, holy shit, we kind of crossed this line. And then after that, everybody was like, they were like basically cheering on the Civil War. But I think that those people, I'm just going to say it, like Tim Pool or any of the militia dipshits on Twitter that I see who are cheering on the Civil War, in my opinion, they're not going to be participating in the Civil War.
No.
Okay. They're going to be on Twitter talking about other people getting murdered, making money off of the ad revenue from their tweets and their YouTube videos. So these are not genuine, earnest, virtuous people who think the country is falling apart and we need to engage in civil war off of principle. These are war profiteers.
Yeah. And it's like the Steven Crowders, the Matt Walshes.
Yeah, they're violent. They're violence profiteers. They're chaos profiteers. And sorry, one of my chatters said something extremely stupid, and they're a longtime audience member that I kind of like, so I need to nip at them real quick. Christian Blair says, no good guy with a gun showed up despite being open carry, womp womp. Okay, there was obviously a security guy standing there who probably had a concealed pistol, but Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck. So obviously his presence didn't deter the shooting. But anybody who's aware of how violence operates would know that a man standing next to you with a pistol isn't going to deter a sniper.
No.
So
no. But it really is weird. There really is it's people deciding, oh, this person had to be left wing, this person had to be right wing. We don't, as far as maybe something concrete came out today, but last time I knew, we did not have any concrete evidence either way. The best we can honestly say is we don't know. The rest is speculation, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and just say it because I have a bunch of GGG people who are using that as evidence for the fact that they think it's like an accelerationist right winger or whatever. See, Perils Oz. But in my opinion, no offense to anybody in chat, no offense to you, but I think that disproportionately trans folk are going to be dating progressive guys. And so, yeah, sure. Are there right wingers who date trans folk? Are there right wingers who fetishize trans folk? Absolutely. But I think 9 times out of 10, when you're talking about a relationship, it's going to be a progressive guy with a trans girl.
Was there any evidence that there even was a relationship there?
Evidence, I have no idea. The only evidence that I've seen is the text messages where he says, I was so tired of the hatred. I'm so sorry, my love, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if I'm sorry, my love is indicative of a romantic relationship, but I've seen it repeated often enough.
Okay. Well, be it as it may, even if we agree that X number out of 10, someone who's in a relationship with X will be this, I will sustain sort of maybe pedantically the stance of it just remains a high probability. It does not remain it does not make it fact. It makes it high probability, so it still makes it speculation at the end of the day. Does that make sense?
Sure. And that's fine if you want to wait for stuff to come out. Like I obviously still held out like a 1 out of 100 chance that it was like a Groyper accelerationist, like it's a white nationalist person who wants to make the country worse. So characters like Nick Fuentes are able to profit from the chaos. I just don't think that's likely at this point. But
Like
yeah,
I just rather not. I'd just rather not say, oh, it was a right winger or oh, it was a left winger without you. Just I'd rather not turn speculation into
assertion.
Assertion. Yeah.
Okay. Then I'm good there, and I think that you and I are probably more aligned on the Charlie Kirk prescriptions after the fact than perhaps Steven. But you were
Steven,
also going to say
we could talk about that as well. It's there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the Charlie Kirk topic. The people that started dancing, cheering, that also was something that I did not find to be very good. People wearing crab costumes, people saying how great it was. Like I think there's a big misunderstanding of what happened for people that started being happy about the event.
What I said today, though, what my coverage is, which I understand some people might find to be abrasive, is that though, if you think that this came from nowhere, then you're not paying attention. And what I mean by that is the murder is bad. The assassination is bad. It makes the world a more dangerous place. It's not good for our national discourse. And if anything, it unified the right when at a time where we were hoping that they would be fracturing. So it's counterproductive. It's evil. It's wrong. It's bad. However, I was part of the reason why I voted for Kamala Harris, even though that we viciously disagree on gun control, is because I do have Ukrainian friends. Okay. I have a friend who lives in Lviv. I'm friends with Dylan Burns. Dylan Burns is doing on the ground reporting in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And so as a result, I'm sympathetic to the Ukrainian people defending their homeland against an invasion from Russia. And if they want to become a part of the West, if they want to integrate economies, if they want to modernize their military, then I want them to do so. And I knew that Donald Trump was going to cut off funding to Ukraine. I knew that he was going to make excuses for Putin. And I knew that there were going to be Ukrainians who were going to die as a result. And so I yelled about that for the better part of a year, but the truth is that a lot of Americans don't care, right?
Yeah.
It's Ukraine's problem, it's Poland's problem, it's Europe's problem. And so as a result, in my opinion, they kind of were either apathetic to or danced on the graves of Ukrainians. And so that's where for me, I don't really I can say that Charlie Kirk being murdered is bad. I can also say that I will have no tears coming down my face as a result of his death.
Yeah. So my personal stance is that weirdly enough, before the shooting happened, I've started being flooded with Charlie Kirk content, to which I just rolled my eyes because I found his arguments to be not really convincing. And I won't pretend that I'm going to mourn Charlie Kirk. Does that make sense? I'm not. He was the man that he was, but I'm also not going to be happy about the thing happening because that's a very.
No, I think it makes it more dangerous. And I think that the TikToks in celebration, the memes about him getting shot in the neck, the 3D printed action figure of him getting shot in the neck, I think
insane.
that all of that kind of stuff, all it does is the right wing says, oh, look at all these left-wing people celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. You think 80% of the things that Charlie Kirk thinks. Therefore, if you died, they would be celebrating your death. And by the way, that's effective propaganda. Having a unifying enemy is effective propaganda.
Yeah. And then we come to Destiny, who comes out and says, oh, the way forward is that this has been a theme for some time. I've been observing this and I've been frankly shaking my head by this rhetoric of the only way to oppose Trump is to basically be like him. Is to fight fire with
Which I
fire.
think is so stupid. I think it's so stupid.
Yes.
I think it's the endless amount. And by the way, I don't even think people believe it. So, for instance, Nazi Germany. Let's say that in World War II, the Allies said that in order to defeat Nazi Germany, we must become like Nazi Germany. So every time that they went into a German city, they rounded up all of the civilians and they shot them in the back of the head and they threw them into ditches. Would that have been necessary for the United States or for the Allies to win World War II? I don't think so. I think it would have made the world a worse place. I think it would have corrupted the souls of the West. I think that we already engaged in enough war crimes as it is. And so as a result, no, I'm not gonna say that you have to do to German civilians what Germans did to Jews and to Roma and to
Yes.
political rivals.
And to a certain
not
degree, there
necessary.
was a call for that at the time. 6 million Jewish people were killed, so there should be a killing of 6 million German people. There was a call for
Right.
that to a certain degree. Yeah.
Well,
the time.
and correct me if I'm wrong. The Soviets were supposed to be kind of brutal when they took Poland and when they took Germany. They were, they weren't just interested in justice or victory. They
No.
were interested in revenge.
And also there was a lot of, that's a whole different topic. The Red Army did a lot of abuse along the way to
Right.
everybody that they met along the way. But that's
Yeah, a whole new can of worms. But I want to read input output real quick. So they says, I wonder how many times Steven has disavowed violence. I've seen it at least 3 times. I couldn't remember the last couple of days. Okay, but input output, what I'm going to argue to you is that he went on to Pierce Morgan, and I'm okay. I'm okay. This is the argument that I'm okay with.
you mean Destiny?
The argument that I'm okay with is Steven saying to the Pierce Morgan panel, if you want me to condemn Charlie Kirk's assassination, then I would like to hear you condemn Donald Trump for trying to overthrow the election of the United States via the January 6th riot. And when you condemn that, then I'll condemn the assassination. And what that does is that puts into the mind's audience that it is bad. You are willing to condemn it, but you want some reciprocity from your argumentative opponents. But what Steven did and said is, he said, nah, fuck it. I'm not condemning that shit. I'll condemn that shit when the right wing takes responsibility for all their shit. Fuck that. And so what that ends up communicating, at least in my book, is that he's at minimum callous about the death. And at maximum, he probably celebrates it to some degree. And he can say that he doesn't. But at the same time, when you have, oh my God, she tagged him, laughing, crying emoji face 8 times, where the widow of Charlie Kirk is watching her dead husband, yeah, you're going to get accused of being a lizard brain sociopath fucking monster. Of course.
He did say that
horrible optics.
that he mocked the widow, didn't he?
What you're asking if he did? Yeah, he mocked the widow. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's basically pretty conclusive. But I feel like someone in the
I think the criticism towards the window is valid, which is effectively you're politicizing your husband's death and you're using it as a recruitment tool for an already rabid political movement. But I think you could say that on Twitter. Are you going to get as many likes? No. Are you going to get as many retweets? No. But is that the more moral statement? Yes.
All right. But I think that someone in my audience said something that is very true, that we also operate in an online space that incentivizes certain things, that incentivize being quote unquote edgy, quote unquote radical, extreme, putting out their messages that will garner views, clicks, engagement.
Yeah.
It becomes...
Well, and I'm with you there, but what's going to happen is, let's say Steven, God forbid, I'll go ahead and knock on wood. Let's say that Steven got jumped at an event and several MAGA people beat him up. Then I'm going to say political violence is wrong. Steven shouldn't have been beaten up. As an American, everything that he said was legal. But am I going to understand it? I'm going to understand it. And if somebody, God forbid, I'll knock on wood again, if somebody takes a shot at him or tries to shoot him or tries to bring a gun to one of his events, am I going to understand it? Yeah.
Yeah, but
I think it's bad, but I'll understand it logically.
You also have to understand that I'm more European when it comes to certain things. I think there's a limit to certain things. I think I'm not so-called free speech absolutist. I don't agree with Destiny when he said that there should be on college campuses local fascist clubs that should be able to just spread their thing and discuss fascism with people, or a local Nazi group on campuses that should be able to do their thing.
You do think or don't think?
Don't think. I think those
Interesting.
should.
That's like a very European perspective, because I do think, but at the same time, with me, it does become a question of, do you believe in freedom?
I
Right?
do, but I believe that.
and-
Yeah.
Oh no, all I was going to say is that, like, if a fascist organization, let's say a fascist organization, like you said, becomes a student organization, and they recruit enough people in order to be politically relevant, and then they're on the verge of seizing power, and they're on the verge of passing like Nazi legislation that's going to result in genocide, then yeah, of course I'm going to agree that like extra legal and extrajudicial violence is like moral.
Mhm.
However, I do think that we need to separate speech from political action from violence, and then there's legal violence done by the state, and there's illegal violence done by third parties. And I think that we have to keep these categories in order to respond appropriately at each step of the way.
I think that I'm gonna. I guess I'm gonna do a callback to my own father. He was a politician. He actually was a person that helped create the Constitution of Poland as it is today. He did a lot of speeches on these things. He ran an organization called the Free Speech Association, interestingly enough. So he was for the freedom of speech. But he also, I remember recently watching one of his, he had an appearance. He talked to various students in Poland, and he said that the freedom of speech, there is nothing more important than it. There is nothing more important than being able to say what you want to say. But there is a very high level of responsibility to speech. Speech is something that has a lot of power behind it. Speech can kill. Speech
I agree.
directed at a certain thing can kill. And so we need to also
Americans are
have...
behind.
Yeah,
we are behind culturally. And what I mean by that is there was this big push. I think everybody knew that speech had consequences through the throughout all of American history. I think people knew that speech had consequences.
Mhm.
But what happened was, and I still believe this to some degree, is there was this liberal anti-bullying saying for children. And it was, I'm rubber and you're glue, and whatever you say, bounces off of me and sticks to you. And I think there's another one, which is what's the other one? There's this, sticks and stones might break my bones, but words will never hurt me, right?
Yeah.
And so I believe in that to a degree, because I think that it teaches kids that when somebody says something upsetting, you don't need to hit them, right?
Yeah,
like you can
true.
just talk shit. You can solve your problems with words. I'm okay with those things. However, I think that combined with the cultures of the thousands, specifically Eminem, where he said, you can't tell me what to say. You can't ban me off of FCC. I can talk about rape. I can talk about murder. I can talk about drugs. It's all art. Go fuck yourself. And so that inculcated with an American culture that ultimately words are meaningless and that words are all arbitrary.
Well, also,
and I think that we're learning really quickly that words are not arbitrary and beliefs are not meaningless.
Since we're going to school examples, I think we can agree if there is let's say a school kid that has a lot of influence among his peers, and that school kid says to five peers, hey, go and beat up that other kid. And the 5 kids beat up that other kid. I think that kid is very much hurt by the words, isn't he?
No, I agree. But what I would say within the American legal framework, the speech is not prohibited. Like, you can say, that kid's a freak. That kid's a loser. That kid sucks. That kid this. That kid that. You can say all of that without consequences, legal consequences. However, once it moves to a call for action, and especially if that action is carried out, then you're liable from a criminal and civil standpoint. And I think that while I think that people need to be responsible with their words. I am okay with having that legal standard because I do think that's where we kind of cross a line from, are you expressing your genuinely held beliefs, or are you trying to manifest into reality something violent and criminal?
Mhm.
Now that being said, I do want to read something from a chatter. Cree Mug says, Counterpoints. There's a country in Southeast Asia that has a mixed feeling in America, both like and dislike, and they're facing challenges from a big nation equally strong than the U.S. This soup pot of a country wants to fight back against for sovereign rights. Many rely on the treaty that the U.S. will step up in case of war, but equally in number, many want to fight back without relying on America. Would you support a portion of your taxes going into supporting that country's arms development? The answer is yes. If it was Taiwan, if it was Vietnam, if it was any of those countries that are trying to maintain their sovereignty against China, then yeah, 100% I'm okay with a portion of my taxes. And real quick, sorry, I know I'm going on a rant, but this is where I kind of drew the values of what I'm calling real republicanism and neoconservatism, which is American militarism and soft power to defend and spread the values of the free world. That's a part of my value set. Absolutely. All right. Sorry. What else? What else do we want to talk about?
The war, of course. The big thing
Yeah.
that I do, going to Ukraine and talking about the children, because I think that's a little bit of an underreported topic, and I always like to talk about it because like to spread the topic to a wider amount of people, if possible. I'll probably be going back to Ukraine soon as well to continue doing the reporting on the situation of the children in Ukraine during this war. There's a multifaceted topic. Do you have any questions about it, or would you like me to introduce it to some degree?
Well, I've just to share. I might be a little bit. Maybe you'll have some interesting insights that I haven't heard before. But my general impression, I've talked to Ukrainian Anna, I've talked to Dylan Burns. It seems like there's a decent amount of willpower amongst the Ukrainian population in order to continue to prosecute the war. However, my concern, I suppose, is the fact that I feel like it's going to be very difficult, nearly impossible for Ukraine to get back Crimea, Donetsk, and Luhansk, and maybe even to some degree like Zaporozhye and Dnipro. And so I don't understand why or how Ukraine should continue fighting the war. It seems like they should negotiate for Zaporozhye and Dnipro to be back into the Ukrainian fold. And then a part of their negotiation should be having a unilateral treaty with the United States, military treaty that guarantees borders, or it should be NATO membership.
Right. There's a lot to be talking about here. I think the situation that we are in, I've been saying it from the very beginning, that the situation that we have found ourselves in is a big failure on the West, the so-called collective West, as we would call it. I am very disappointed from the beginning to now as how this whole thing has been played out, from aid to everything else. I feel like it's very disappointing that Russia, in practical terms, has more reliable allies than Ukraine. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that. And I feel like the reason why Ukrainian people are adamant about not giving up these territories is because they understand very well what the implication is for the people in those territories that would be given up. We already know what is happening in the occupied territories. We already know what sort of suffering it entails. I personally have a very strong association when it comes to the word occupation that has been drilled into my head since I was very small, because Poland, of course, has gone through the German occupation, and my family's from Warsaw, and my grandparents lived during the occupation. And so this image, I have a very specific image in my mind when I hear the word occupation. And of course, I do interviews with organizations that rescue children, among other things, from the occupied territories. I interviewed people from occupied territories that escaped from those territories, and the stories that they shared also create a very, very grim picture when it comes to what happens to those people, what their daily experience is, what their to what they can be looking forward to. There's also this huge hope of those people. They really hope that one day, like no matter how much suffering they have to go through, one day they will be able to be liberated. One day they will be able to return to Ukraine, and for all that to just be kind of cut off, ended with, oh yeah, we're just gonna negotiate and this land will go to Russia, feels very difficult, to put it lightly.
No, I mean, I didn't think about that until you said it, but maybe Eastern Europeans, because they had already lived under Soviet authoritarianism, they might be less likely to accept. They might be less likely to accept Russian control because they already lived under Russian control for almost a century. So that makes a shitload of sense. Now, the only thing that I would say in counter to that, though, is I would try. And by the way, I know exactly practically where the objections are going to come from. I would put like 30 days on mass migration, and I would say that like Russian forces are prohibited from stopping civilians from moving to and from Russian occupied territory or Ukrainian occupied territory, and then effectively everybody who wants to be with Ukraine could immigrate, west, and anybody who wants to be a part of Russia could immigrate east. Now, this already happened in India and Pakistan, and I do know exactly the kind of violence that could be happening, which is effectively like anybody who tries to leave west is going to be treated as a traitor. They could be raped, they could be abused, they could have all their property stolen, they could be murdered, they could be thrown into ditches. And so as a result, that if that happened a few times, that means that you're condemning everyone else in that territory to slavery, effectively. So yeah, like I understand the dangers of it, but I also think that the suffering that is going to happen as the war continues is going to be worse than my proposal.
Well, let's not also forget that this sort of thing creates a massive immigration crisis, a massive refugee crisis, and we already live in a world. I'm not sure what your opinion on these topics is, but we already live in a world that is very hostile to refugees, to asylum seekers, to any sort of immigration movements.
Well, hopefully Ukrainians would be settling within Ukraine.
Well, that's not always realistic. That is not always available. That is not always, like, Ukraine cannot accommodate for all these people coming from each one area to the other. That is why it already resulted in this huge immigration.
I would say it's incumbent upon NATO and incumbent upon the United States to provide the necessary resettling services required for Ukrainian war refugees. And by the way, like, I know that you're saying that the world is already hostile to refugees and stuff. Maybe this is like a very American idea. However, I think that there's a lot more hostility to brown and black and Asian immigrants, particularly from the Middle East and North Africa and Africa. I think that Americans and hopefully Europeans to some degree are more accepting of Caucasian immigrants.
That seems to be the case on at first glance, but it becomes a much wider anti-immigration sentiment, which includes also those people that you would think would be receiving less hostile treatment. It just becomes.
I mean, I understand that. You would think that the Poles, as cousins of the Ukrainians, would be accepting of mass migration of Ukrainians, but I understand that the Polish right wing might say, "Nah, fuck that, not our problem."
Yeah, it does. Especially the far right wing says that. So there's a slogan popularized by a far pro-Russian politician: "Stop the Ukrainization of Poland."
Right. So yeah, so there's war okay, so the right wing, and I'm assuming most Poles, hate Russia and hate the Soviet Union and hate the Russian Empire and all that kind of stuff. And then there's another country that's next door that's getting fucked over by the Russian Empire. So simultaneously chomping at the bit to fight Russia, but also not willing to deal with the consequences of Russian aggression. So yeah, that sounds, with how incoherent American politics are, that's unsurprising to me that Polish politics are similar.
Yeah. There is a lot of unwillingness to do certain things that, in my opinion, should be done, like protecting the Ukrainian skies from missiles and drones, but that's a whole different topic. No, there is a very clearly an anti-immigration sentiment. Like, for example, I'm not sure if you're aware that the United Kingdom started refusing Ukrainian refugees, saying that Western Ukraine is relatively safe, and therefore the United Kingdom will not be receiving any more Ukrainian refugees. They will be just
Listen,
driven back.
I'm of the same dislike and distaste of UK right-wing politics as I am of American right-wing politics at this moment. I believe in American sovereignty. I believe in the UK sovereignty. I believe in all of that kind of stuff. However, we have this guy named whatever 4690, and maybe I'll unban him eventually, but he was a total fucking asshole last week, so I banned him. But he was in the UK, and if you talk to him, you would have thought that the country is just roving bands of Pakistanis raping and murdering every British person. You would have thought that the Eastern European workers were coming and dispossessing every working class and middle class UK person from having a job. You would have thought that the sky was falling in. And then you check the actual statistics for like violence and rape and murder in the United Kingdom, and it's like half of what the United States experiences. And so it's just kind of crazy to me that the propaganda is so pernicious that effectively people think that it's the apocalypse. Meanwhile, they're living in relatively stable and decent lives.
I mean, that is basically exactly why I was against the whole idea of having a fascist club on the college campus, is because it's very easy to spread and propagate conspiracy and lies, and it's very difficult to present factual information because you need to sit down, you have to present things very factually and in a very systematized way. And when you just present lies and misinformation, you can just go ham and not care at all. And that I
know,
think this is.
But oftentimes these people suffer from their own attempts at lying at propaganda. Just as an example, like Milo Yiannopoulos, okay? I DM Milo Yiannopoulos every now and then, or Tommy Robinson. Yeah, that's another perfect example. These people, what they do is they find a niche topic about like justice or immigration or right-wing sovereignty or the Great Replacement or whatever, and then they just bang on that war drum for like 5 to 10 years, where they're just talking about Great Replacement, Great Replacement, Great Replacement, Great Replacement, or they're talking about rapist migrant gangs, rapist migrant gangs, rapist migrant gangs. But what happens is they become so used to banging on that drum for money, clout, and influence that they destroy their personal lives. Like Tommy Robinson is an alcoholic who, as far as I know, oftentimes runs out of money to run events because he's so like all over the place at all times. I think that Milo Yiannopoulos has destroyed his personal life and is now, despite being quite funny on Twitter, he's not taken seriously as like a political operative. And so, yeah, like that's where oftentimes these people are destroyed by their own efforts.
That's true.
And Sam says that's not happening with Nick. And I think they're referring to Nick Fuentes. But yeah, Sam, Nick Fuentes can't leave his house for fear of being murdered. Because if Nick's almost been murdered at his own house and Charlie Kirk was murdered in public, you better believe that if the Groypers actually get close to power, Nick Fuentes is on the chopping block to get gunned down. I'm not even saying that as like a good thing. I'm saying that as like a descriptive thing.
I mean, on the one hand,
I'm listening. I just need to let my dogs out.
Okay.
I'm still listening. They're just silly.
Okay. I'll just wait for you to return.
Yeah.
On the one hand, that is true, but on the other hand, we do live in the reality of Donald Trump being the president of the United States. We do live in the reality of radical right-wing groups gaining more and more power in Europe. We do live in the reality of immigrants, refugee seekers, asylum seekers being treated effectively as non-people, as non-entities, as chips. for political gain. We live in these realities of populist lies being spread and propagated. In Poland, as I've said, there is this growing even anti-Ukrainian sentiment in which people claim that Ukrainian people just come to Poland to leech on the system, to take money away, where the reality is that Ukrainian people are a huge boost to the GDP and create much more wealth for Poland than basically Poland should be grateful very for Ukrainian people being here. But that's not the reality that many people believe in because they are fed popular.
Well, I can understand that, but I think that there's underlying issues that exacerbate this thing that liberals, I'm quite critical of liberals, even though I believe in maximal human freedom. I think that there's underlying issues that they're not willing to contend with. So we were talking about like economics earlier. So when we're talking about economics, it feels like for the working class and the middle class, they want to work 40 to 60 hours a week and they want to be able to afford a middle class life. And what I mean by that in the United States is they want to be able to afford their house or their apartment. They want to be able to eat groceries without worrying about whether or not they're going to be able to eat this week. They want to be able to afford transportation to and from their job. And they want their job to not be so stressful with so many hours that they end up dying early as a result of the stress of their work. Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of what like the average working class, middle class person wants, right? Whereas it seems like liberals are just, they constantly, when the working class is bitching about all these problems, they say, well, if you want to be super rich and successful, you can figure it out. There's tons of rich and successful people. And so they don't address the economic anxiety. And then when a bunch of migrants come, a bunch of immigrants come, and they start working as a part of the working class and the middle class, then it seems like liberals just say, well, if you object to other people coming to your country to participate in the economy while you feel like you're getting fucked over, then realistically you're racist. And so that's not a solution for the average working class or middle class person, which is why I would say that they are right-wing radicalized. Because the right wing, they have terrible policies, but they at least acknowledge the difficulty of being working class and middle class. And they also give you an enemy to hate, which is the foreign migrants who are coming to compete in the labor marketplace.
I mean, from my perspective, like if we talk about the left wing and the right wing, I think everybody recognizes problems. Everybody recognizes issues. I think the biggest difference is not recognizing issues. The biggest problem is the solution prescriptions. Like, for example,
sorry, could you say that again about prescriptions?
I would say that the biggest difference is not recognizing that issues exist. The biggest problem is sides not agreeing how to solve those issues. For example, healthcare seems to be a big thing. I would say that creating a free healthcare for people would be a solution to many of these problems. I would say that when it comes to financial strife, guaranteeing people free education on a higher level would definitely help, since in Poland it's free, in many places in Europe it's free, and in the United States for some unexplained reason going to university will land you in debt, which from my perspective is a very abstract idea that you
it's very silly. I don't necessarily have a problem with people going into debt for education, but what I do think it has happened in the United States is we used to have like a pretty good return on investment for bachelor's degrees, and we used to have a pretty good return on investment for associate's degrees and technical certificates. So what happened was people said, oh, this is the gate to freedom is education. But what happened was, though our returns on investment for associate's degrees and college degrees and technical certifications, they didn't keep up with the cost. And so as a result, we're going into debt for education that's not, like, it still does pay off. I'm sure Destiny has talked about this dozens of times. People with bachelors, people with associates, people with masters, they do get their money back, but it takes a long time. And so I think that's where that economic frustration comes in. It's like, I have a good life. I have a very good life. And so far, I've been able to work and keep my wife at home and still manage to pay bills, which is fucking amazing. Like it's very amazing. But I would be lying to you if I wasn't stressed out a healthy chunk of the time because of how expensive life is.
That is true. But I think that even when we talk about good return for the investment and getting into that and getting that good return for it, I think there's a pretty perverse incentive baked into that as well. Because, for example, if you have education that is gate kept by money, then suddenly it uh, puts in an assumption that basically our main goal in life is to be the most productive, is to be the most, is to choose the thing that will bring us the most profit. But for example, what if I have a job? Let's say I have a job, right? It's not the best paying job, but it allows me to get by, it allows me to pay the bills, and I would like to get education in something unrelated, something more to my interests, something more to my passions. I like to personally enrich myself. So I go to university for language studies, very niche language studies. Let's say I choose a very far away country that I would like apart from working, I would like to learn about a very far away country, its culture and language. And in that case, if it's catered by a lot of money, it's branded as a useless
Frivolous.
degree.
Yep.
It's,
No, that's actually, I was going to say, you were clicking on my right wing hostility to, learning. So I love learning. I speak 2 languages. I speak French pretty well. I can speak conversational Spanish. I'm okay at math. I'm pretty good at language arts. So anyways, the point is that I do value education, and I do think that education should be emphasized within society. And I do think that you shouldn't just be a productive worker bee.
right.
However, I do think that the wealth of the American and Western world is reliant on a high degree of productivity. And so while I think that you shouldn't dedicate your entire life to just being productive, I think it's reasonable to expect people you're asleep a third of your life. Okay. A third of your life, you're asleep.
Mm-hmm.
A third of your life is effectively already segregated for work. If you work 40 hours a week, that's 25% of your life is work.
Mm-hmm.
And so the remaining time is time off. I think it's okay to expect the 25% of your life to be productive, for that to be like what you pay in order to live in a wealthy society is 40 hours a week of productivity.
Mm-hmm. Of course, already
The problem
certain
right now in
countries
the
are.
Americas is that it's 60 hours a week of productivity.
Yeah.
That's the problem with the American calculation.
Already countries are starting to toy with the idea of shortening the work week. Like Poland is starting to play around with the idea of shortening, because there's a lot of calculus that proves that actually if you do that, the productivity does not necessarily fall off as much. But that's a whole different topic. The example I gave, in that example, I am working, but I also want to take on Fido. Sorry, my German Shepherd is very, as
That's
you
a
can
great
hear.
name for a German Shepherd.
No, Fido is his name. It's the most
No, that's what I'm saying.
stereotypical.
It's a great name.
Yeah?
It's a great name. But I was gonna say that, I'm not gonna lie, Eastern Europeans owning German Shepherds makes me nervous. But I do want to read a chat. Lethal Lance says, I'm a student, so I don't have healthcare via job right now. I'm lucky my wife is active duty for 6 more months, but when she gets out, my son is low-key effed. Lethal Lance, I'm gonna tell you, check the marketplace when your wife gets out. Since I'm self-employed and I make less than 100K as an individual, my healthcare is significantly subsidized. Now, my healthcare sucks, but I can go to the emergency room. I don't have to worry about the emergency room. We have like a max out of pocket of $8,000. We have like a 20% co-insurance until we hit that $8K amount. But realistically, I can get into hospitals and get the necessary medical services needed, and then I can deal with people on the back end. And it only my health insurance for 4 people is $200 a month. So yeah, it's bad health insurance, but it's pretty cheap.
Yeah,
$200
but
a month is not too bad.
like for example, I have some family in Texas, Austin, Texas, and they have a kid. There was some years back. The kid has some specific condition. I'm not sure what the condition is, and they've bought the top tier insurance for it. But it turns out that it does not cover that specific thing. So they're like,
right. Yeah. No, private health insurance. Listen, I think there's market failures, and the government needs to step into market failures. I think healthcare, as an example, there are some goods within a market that you will pay any price in order to get. And oftentimes that those products are the ones that will get price gouged.
right.
As an example, like an iPhone could cost $100 to produce, but you're going to pay $1,000 or $1,500 over the course of a cell phone payment plan, because a smartphone is such a vital part of the modern, the modern technological landscape.
Yeah.
And so cell phone companies know that. So they're going to make you spend $1,500 for a cell phone, even if it only costs them $100 to manufacture. So what I'm saying is your health, your life, when you're dying in a hospital, you have two options when it comes to debt in the United States. You can say, well, I don't want my family to be in debt, so I'm going to die because fuck it, I don't even like life that much. Or you're going to say, my life is super valuable. I'll go tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and then we'll figure it out on the back end. And if I have to declare bankruptcy, I'll declare bankruptcy. So putting people in that bind, I think, is a market failure.
Yeah, it's a commodification of human life. But like, for example, I can give you I'll give you an example of free healthcare working pretty well in my case. I had a mental health crisis at the end of 2023, right? So I voluntarily admitted myself to a hospital, a mental healthcare hospital, and that hospital offered healthcare for completely free. You didn't have to have any sort of insurance. It was subsidized by a special program and completely free. It was free for everybody. Anybody that would admit themselves would have this service for free. And you basically have a bedding, you have free meals per day, you have a dedicated psychiatrist that speaks with you every single day, that is your leading doctor. You have a psychologist that is your leading doctor. And in addition, they also arranged for a separate psychologist for me. So nice. I would say that that's a pretty good deal to be given for absolutely free without any strings attached.
Absolutely. Well, we have hit around an hour and change for our stream together. It's 2:20. I normally stream for around 5 hours, so I'm hitting the 5-hour mark. Is there anything else you want to address before we kind of wrap up and do shout outs?
Yes, the children.
Okay.
The big topic that I talk about, the children. Would you like to talk about children overall in war, or would you like me to talk about the kidnapped children? Because those two topics that I'm pretty passionate about and I do work around.
Well, yeah, for the sake of efficiency, probably the kidnapped children. But if you also want to just talk about like the issue, like what work you're doing for children in warfare in general, then yeah, I'm down to hear about it. Yeah,
for example, recently I went to Kharkiv, where I met Anastasia. She helped me a great deal when I went there with to housing, etc. And I went to a class of children because, unfortunately, things have compounded for Ukraine. People don't realize how badly things have compounded for Ukrainian children. First, it was COVID, and you know what a mess that was. When children could not go to school, they had to have the internet education, which led to education gaps, which led to all sorts of problems. You probably are aware of that, right? That was a worldwide phenomenon. And that did not end for Ukraine. That did not end because the war started. And in Kharkiv, for example, in a lot of cases, children cannot go to a normal school. So they continued again with online education. There are some built underground schools, the so-called bunker schools, but they do not offer education for all children. They have to be rotated. A lot of children will not go to these schools. And some of the children that I've interviewed have not had in-person contact with other children for years now. Some of them have never in their life experienced in-person education. They have only experienced online education, and that creates huge problems with socialization. This creates huge problems with education. Organizations outside of the government have to create special recreation tours for children to be able to meet other kids. They create groups in which they can meet, have group activities in order for them to be able to socialize normally. And that is a huge effect on the children of the war that is not really being recognized or talked about, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think I didn't think about that. And one of the things that popped into my head while you were mentioning that is effectively that there was a glide bomb or a Syed drone or something, and it hit a playground and it killed a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
And I could imagine being a parent in that scenario where you're like, okay, well, we've been at war for 4 or 5 years. I live in Kharkiv, or I live by a city that's close to the front line. And yeah, it's possible that we could die from artillery strikes, but I need to raise my kid as normally as possible. But then I can only imagine the misery and grief that you made that choice to allow your child to go outside, and then as a result they died in an artillery strike or a Syed bombing or a drone bombing or something like that.
Yeah.
I can only imagine the guilt and rage that you feel that you were trying to live your life and your son or daughter was murdered for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I can imagine all the other parents in the town are like, well, I'm not going to take the risk. I'm just going to keep my kid inside.
Yeah. And this is a huge problem. This is why there's this organization that I work with, the Voices of Children, and they organize group meetings. They organize activities for children to be together, to even simple things like drawing, talking about things, creating stories from little flashcards. I've recorded a few of these lessons, and it becomes a huge help for children that have not had contact with other children for years on end, because the only type of education that they've experienced is online because of the war.
No, that's I mean, that's obviously noble work, and I can only imagine. So, for instance, my son, not trying to get too personal, but my first child, he was just brilliant out the gate, lots of words, all that kind of stuff. My second boy is also brilliant and also strong, but he's just not as verbal as my first child. And so, what we have found is necessary for him to express himself. It has to be exposure with other children, because they don't socialize with adults the way that they socialize with kids. With adults, they're asking for stuff and they're trying to get something, or I need a snack, or I need to watch TV, or I want to watch this TV. And they're not using words, they're using sounds, right? Whereas with another kid, what they're trying to do is they're trying to share an experience together, because they view each other as peers. And it's a totally different relational dynamic that necessitates communication. And so while my son knows that he can point at the refrigerator and go, and I'm going to go get him food, he knows that another 2 or 3 year old is not going to understand that. And so there's an additional effort into trying to communicate, particularly during formative years.
Yeah. There's a lot of different problems that children go through when it comes to war, and I think that it should be talked about a lot more. Like I've interviewed a kid that had a building destroyed right next to him, and he just stopped going out of the apartment. He just kept in the corridor. He lived in the corridor, and he did things in the corridor. He just lived online because he would get panic attacks. He would have problems breathing. And then the organization Voices of Children would step in, would have therapy sessions with him, and he would kind of slowly get out of this state. He even showed me some of the exercises, breathing exercises, when you inhale and then exhale, and you do it for your whole hand. And then, for example, the kid wants to be a soccer. I'm going to use the word soccer player. And practices with his peers, and after the therapy sessions, when he became more resilient to these things, there was a situation in which he was practicing on a field with his friends, and there was a missile strike very nearby. There was an explosion, and all of his friends fell to the ground, and he had the fortitude to say, okay, let's get up, and he led them to a shelter. He organized them and led them to a shelter because he had this emotional and psychological prep work to be able to deal with such situations. And I think this is also very valuable and important.
No, that's beautiful. I do like to keep my shows kind of around 60 minutes to 90 minutes though, and I like to keep my streams around 5 hours just for the sake of watchability, so more people watch the content.
Yeah.
So I guess if people wanted to support Voices of Children or they wanted to support you specifically, where do they find you? What do they support? How do they support?
Well, I can be supported. I have a YouTube, Lucy Hazeh. That's a thing. I have a White Forest page, lucyhazeh.org/live. I have a Twitch. So I guess if you want to come support what I do, you can come to my White Forest page. That would be the best, because I'm trying to go to Ukraine soon again and continue what I do.
Well, and Lucy Hazeh, the way that it was spelled on the Discord was Lucy Hayes, right?
Yeah,
So
I think
Lucy
it's just I think
Haze.
I came to the conclusion that however you like to pronounce it is the best way to pronounce it. So if you like Hayes more,
perfect.
then it's Hayes. If you like Hazeh more, it's Hazeh.
All right, then I'm going to run. I'm going to engage with chat a little bit more. If you want to keep us updated, then feel free to DM me and we'll set up another one-on-one.
All right.
And I appreciate the work that you're doing. I wish you Godspeed. I hope you're completely safe. I hope all the kids that you work with are completely safe. And I think DM me if you haven't already linked up with Dylan Burns. You obviously need to. So if you need more communication with him, then obviously DM me.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Lucy. Pleasure talking with you, and I hope you have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
All right. So, how did it go? Going well? Well, that's good. We didn't talk about socialism all that much. We didn't get to... All right is better than bad. How do I... Whatever. I'll think about it later. I'll set one up later. Productive convo. That's good. Productive is better than... Don't be like that. Thank you. Hello, reason riffs. I hope I've gained a viewer. That's on the bottom left. Is it? No, it's not. What? What do you mean? I live in neighboring Germany. Sometimes I'm on Destiny streams. Oh. Well, I'm certainly hoping I've gained a viewer as I continue my quest to become a small streamer from a micro streamer. The socialism part was not that long. Hold up. Okay, the lower left, bottom left is plus, add the scene. It's not set up start virtual camera. It's not on the bottom left. It's in the middle right. Hold on. Start virtual camera. This did nothing. It did nothing. I have no... What? What am I supposed to do? It's not working. I have no clue how to make it work. Sorry. Uh, I do have the multi-stream add-on. I do have the multi-stream add-on. I don't know. We see what was the original topic of discussion because it was all over the place. Socialism. I don't know. I'm fine at being all over the place. It means you can cover a lot of different ground. What do you think about the future of Poland? Is there hope against the far right? Yeah, I think there is. If the current coalition does not fall apart, then there might be some hope. Although the current coalition is in a little bit of trouble. And we have a far right president. Yeah, I'm gonna call him far right. Nawrocki. He's a far right dude. So I think there's You wrote an article about him. Can you link it? Can you link the article? Preferably in English. I hope it's in English. But is he a Duda? He's worse, actually. Actually, he's worse than Duda. Duda was a pen. He had the nickname Pen because he was just very complicit and he would just sign all the things that the ruling government would send him to sign. And this one's more proactive in his damaging prescriptions. So he's worse, actually, than Duda. Can you link it? Can you link it on my page? Because YouTube's gonna just eat up your stuff, so... Up. Yeah, he's a dude, not a duda. Exactly. That is what's happening. Hold on, I'm gonna check up on Fido. Maybe go to the toilet. I'll be right back. Well, thank you. Ooh, article. All right, let's read it. Lucy needs a waiting screen and music, and more importantly, not forget about setting it up. Listen, I will not. I have a waiting screen, sort of. I do have a waiting screen. Hold on, I'm gonna show it. This is my waiting screen, so now I need music. Isn't this cool? You didn't use it. Listen. I forget about these things. You know what? More than anything, I appreciate people's effort. Triangle strategy us for the waiting screen. That would be actually pretty good. I think sometimes it's not the most important to be the best, quote unquote, but it's important to put certain ideas across. So if you manage to do that in your article, then that is the most important thing. It's my opinion, at least. Browser. Oh, this page could not be found. Okay, I cannot access your article. It says that the page cannot be found. If you could relink it, I'd be very grateful. Copy link address. Karol Nawrocki. Many people mispronounce the surname of Karol Nawrocki. The many faces of Karol Nawrocki, the new Polish president. I'm really curious if you've done your homework, because Karol Nawrocki has a lot of controversy surrounding him as a person, a lot of crazy... let's just say that he has a very colorful past. The election. This victory comes at a time when Poland's economy continues to grow robustly, including thanks to Ukrainian people, as I've mentioned before. The more I read, the more I was put off by my... Yeah, that's a very, very colorful character. Let's just say that. This victory comes at a time when Poland's economy continues to grow robustly, with a GDP per capita now comparable to Spain's and projected to compete with the wealthiest EU nations within the next decade. However, since 2016, corruption in Poland has notably increased. Yeah, it has, because Law and Justice was in power. We could be talking at length about all the scandals that have been happening. Driven by weakened judicial independence, expanded political control, overstate in institutions, and misuse of public funds, benefiting party-linked media and cronies, all developments occurring under the previous hardline nationalist president Andrzej Duda. It's not exactly like that, because it's not exactly under the president Andrzej Duda. This is a bit of a... I feel like this is a little bit of a misunderstanding, because the president is not exactly the head honcho in Poland. That would be the prime minister. And when it comes to the Law and Justice Party, there's an even bigger misunderstanding, because when the Law and Justice Party was in charge and Duda was the president, it was neither the president nor the prime minister that were the top dog, so to speak, in the country. The top person in the country when the Law and Justice Party was in charge was, without a doubt, Jarosław Kaczyński. We already had the conversation, Socialix. You missed it. You missed the conversation. We've talked for like over an hour or something. We've talked for an hour. He was on. He was on, yeah. I've even gained some new viewers. So yeah, the leader of the party, the Law and Justice Party, Jarosław Kaczynski. He was in charge. He was the de facto leader of the country. Jarosław Kaczynski. Yeah. Andrzej Duda was treated as this guy who would just sign anything that the party would give him to sign. That's why he had the nickname The Pen. That was his unironic nickname, The Pen. Andrzej Duda The Pen. So there's a little bit of a the puppet master. He did not have any he did not hold any office, but he was the leader of the party in charge, which made him the most powerful guy in the country, de facto. Which is an interesting little fact. Consequently, many within the European community had hoped for a stabilizing figure, with Poland's prime minister being a committed Europhile. A similarly pro-EU president would have likely been drawn Poland closer for Brussels. I think we're confusing the timeline a little bit here, because before 2023, before the end of 2023, the Law and Justice Party was in charge. So we had a very anti-European Union prime minister all the way till the end of 2023. So with Poland's prime minister being a committed Europhile, a similarly pro-EU president would have likely drawn Poland closer to Brussels during a critical juncture for European unity. It was not to be, very sadly. It was not to be. Although the president does not directly craft legislation, the office holds considerable veto power. And interestingly enough, that veto power has been lowered a bit. Yeah, I know, but that's the way it's written is a little bit, I think you could make it more clear that there was this period since 2016 till when Law and Justice was in power, and then the new party came in power. I think this could be made a little bit more clear in the article, if I can offer my 2 cents. Potentially rendering ineffective any government and prime minister with whom the president disagrees. Technically speaking, the veto can be overturned if a party has enough of a majority in the parliament, but unfortunately the currently ruling coalition does not have that majority, so it does not have the power to overrule the veto. Oh, you're writing an article now. Oh, thank you. No. Not so as Fido. My dog wants something, but I, honest to God, do not know what he wants from me. Fido. He's unhappy about something, but I have no clue what about. So yeah, there's this really important factor that the ruling coalition right now does not have the majority in the parliament needed to overrule the veto. It's like, it's a significant factor in all this. He's angry at chat for not locking in. True. Xander Hall would not be pleased with you. In order to forecast the trajectory of Poland, a country of huge geographical and economical significance to the EU and more widely Europe, one must ask, who is Karol Nawrocki? Also, Karol Nawrocki, speaking of, has recently demanded 1.3 trillion euro from Germany in the reawakening of the whole, Fido. Okay, I have to stop Fido from doing bad things now. The reparation topic. The reparation from Germany because of World War II topic, which in my opinion is a fool's errand. Yeah, this Nawrocki is, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. He was at the top of the organization called the IPN, the National Institute of Remembrance, and he was the chief censor of Holocaust history. He would censor any historians that would talk about the Polish participation in the Holocaust. That is a very touchy subject, and unfortunately a reality that Polish people also participated in the Holocaust. So hold on, I'll be right back, okay? Because I have takeout ordered and I don't want it to miss. She jumped at me. Okay, sitting down. I'm continuing to read. Fido. Okay, childhood and studies. Oh my god, we're getting into it now. Karol Nawrocki is Poland's first millennial president. Fido. What does he want? Fido. Fido? Shut. Shut, Fido. Fido, shut. Shut, Fido. Shut, Fido. 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 What is he? He wants his own cam. I have to check something. Hold on. He did not have enough water. I think he did not have enough water. He only had like no water with some weird stuff on the bottom of his bowl. So yeah, he wanted water. He wanted water. All right. First millennial president born at the tail end of communist rule, 1983, in Gdańsk. His father actively opposed communism, sowing the seed for the anti-communist zeal that is fundamental in understanding his mentality. I mean, my father wasn't as I've said, my father was in the Solidarity. Yeah. It cannot be understated what perspective he would have had on the downfall of communism, with Gdańsk the birthplace of Solidarity, the movement that rose up against the dictatorship. Moreover, it was at the dockyards that the movement garnered substantial support, with Karol's father, a dockyard worker, himself joining the organization. The movement. I think that's a better way to phrase it. The movement. I've heard mixed things about Solidarity. That's because Solidarity right now, it's not exactly the Solidarity that was. Like, if you heard mixed things about Solidarity right now, then that's fair. But the Solidarity of the 80s and 70s were a completely different beast than the organization of Solidarity today. Trust me. By the way, I live in Germany, but I'm a native English speaker. Oh, okay. Makes sense. But I think it's not about the English language. I'm not really making a linguistic correction. I just think that it's more, I just think it's more accurate to characterize Solidarity as a movement rather than an organization. I'm not really making a linguistic correction when I say that. From the fall of the Soviet Union, I heard that it has been mismanaged a lot. Yeah, that's accurate. That is accurate. It has been taken over by very far-right elements, I think. That, as an impressionable boy, he was given front row seats to the overthrowing of communism. Well, to be fair, he was a pretty young kid when the government was overthrown. 83, that would make him 6 years old, right? And 1989. Though it can be assumed that Catholicism was in the background of his childhood, with this being typical of the region, little is said of this as a defining feature. Growing up in the 1990s, Karol's father went to the UK in order to find work, exemplifying the work ethic with which he identifies. Fido. As a keen sportsman, Karol was known for his skills as a footballer and boxer, boxing and competitively from 2000 to 2004. Fido. I was born in 1984, but the collapse of the Berlin Wall was still in my memory, for example. That is true. But it was still the memories of a small child. Those are still the memories of a small child. Like, you were not exactly grasping the situation like an adult would. We cannot pretend that a small child will experience these things the same way that an adult would. Fajdo, chodź. No co się dzieje? Fajdo. Fajdo. Chodź. Chodź, Fajdo. Fajdo. No co jest? No co jest? Co się dzieje, no? I have no clue what's happening with Fido right now. Does he want to go out? Does he want... But I already went outside with him. It's a different perspective, but in some ways also more impressionable in sense of, I guess. I mean, I was also born in 1984. It's not a secret. My age is not a secret. Okay? I was also born in 1984. So I went through these events as well. My parents being in the solidarity movement, etc. The first election. Also, he took part in thug fights between people in the forest. I wonder if... oh, yeah. I see. A hunger for violence. Okay, you're gonna mention his checkered history. Are you gonna mention the whole thing about him getting an apartment from the elderly guy? Are you gonna mention that scandal, the apartment scandal? If you're gonna mention the apartment scandal, then you've done your homework on Navratsky. Student era. Oh, that was a big one. Okay, the apartment scandal. Oh, that was a big one. Okay, that there was a... because national housing is a thing in Poland, and he sort of, let's just say that he scammed he scammed an elderly guy to be able to buy an apartment at a fraction of a price, and then he basically took a nationalized apartment and he took it to a private market. It's just it's a whole thing. It's a whole mess. The whole apartment thing, and he gave 5 different contradictory explanations about the apartment. So I'm surprised you did not. Okay, Fido took something. I'm surprised you did not include that in your article. I'll be right back. Hold on. He just steals an item and just runs away and just wants me to follow him, and it annoys me. Okay, I just cannot. My dog ruins the streams. I certainly would have included it if I had found a source that was also trying to keep an article at a reasonable length. Most readers never finish these articles, alas. Yeah, I know. I had he promised to take care of that guy for the rest of his life in exchange for a house, but then ditched him after getting the home. Yeah, he did. He did. He did ditch him. Yes, that is correct. He was living in some, I don't know. It was a messy situation. So he just ended up getting an apartment for the fraction of the market price. That's basically what happened. Student era publications by Nawrocki in the conservative monthly Arcana praised Poland's NATO accession. He has since repeatedly signaled his support and belief in NATO, despite having completed a bachelor's degree in personnel administration. His attention was drawn towards the study of history, completing a doctorate with a thesis titled Social Resistance to Communist Rule in the Elbląg Voivodeship 1976-1989. Demonstrated an eye for historical accuracy, utilizing mostly primary sources as the basis for his argumentation, which is really interesting considering his attitude towards certain topics within history. I guess he throws out his keen eye for historical accuracy out the window when it comes to certain controversial topics. A hunger for violence. Oh, there we go. Our man. Karol's love of fighting didn't remain in the ring. He has himself admitted involvement in pre-planned illegal street brawls between football gangs. In May 2025, Nawrocki publicly acknowledged taking part in a 70 versus 70 arranged fight, a pre-planned street brawl typical of football hooligan culture between supporters of Legia Gdańsk and Lech Poznań in 2009. Well, hello, Van Corno. Brought a million of viewers. Hi, hello. How's it going? Well, doing a stream. Hello, Van Corno. Listen, you're here, so it's all good. It's all good now that you're here. What's on the news? We're reading an article by one of the viewers about the new Polish president. I find it very interesting. And I like to recognize people's efforts when it comes to article writing because I know that it's not easy to write an article, believe it or not. Takes a lot of effort to write an article, so I can definitely I have a lot of respect. Okay. Let's continue. Sorry. It's from a few months ago. Yeah, it's been a bit since Nawrocki won the... I guess he was willing for fight for Gdańsk, yeah. It's gonna be interesting. I'm gonna listen as I multitask. Thank you. Also, multitasking is not a real thing. Just saying. Our brains are not capable of actual multitasking. Street brawls, Lech Poznań, describing it as a sporting noble fight among men. Yeah, I remember. Noble combat. Let me believe in multitasking. Alright. Despite not being himself arrested, others involved in the violence were. That's why I'll need to leave in a minute, otherwise my article on UK immigration policy will never be finished. That's fair. Thank you. I hope to see you here again Well, then autopiloting, that's fair. Autopiloting is a thing. Absolutely. I certainly hope I have earned a viewer today. Because as I've said before, my big goal is to become a small streamer. Because I'm a micro streamer now. Lettuce says, I thought he promised to take care of that guy for the rest of his life. I already saw that comment. But yes. We are growing from micro to small. That is the goal right now. Despite, for sure, we can also have a chat on stream about European politics still left in Europe. Yes, that would be great. That would be amazing. Thank you. Add me to friends on Discord and we can arrange something because, yes, that would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool indeed. Despite only admitting to this single case, it is highly probable that he was ingrained into the culture with him having the nickname Dr. Knockout, suggesting regular involvement. Lehia's culture has systematically far-right nationalist beliefs with strongly held xenophobic positions. At matches, various banners exemplify direct anti-EU nationalist sentiment. Arguably, this involvement in extremist culture is more significant than the violence itself. There's also a stronger tie with region amongst the scene's culture that has been spoken of from his childhood, suggesting this was defining of his movement towards becoming a more devout Catholic. Legia Ultras frequently invoke God, honor, and nation. Bóg, honor, ojczyzna. All these aspects of Karol's current belief honed into a polite narrative for the electorate demonstrate how he was shaped by being embedded in the football hooligan culture. A little bit like... Wait, I'm gonna pick it up. Hey, we're gonna finish reading this and then I'm gonna, go eat because there's a takeout. Chat on stream. Work experience. Institute of National Remembrance and Museum to the Second World War. Oh my god. Okay, this is a very... Oh my god. Okay, we're gonna finish reading this next time. I did not know that this article was so long. I mean, it's very pro, but we're gonna finish reading it next time. It's just a really long article. Oh my goodness. I did not know. I did not expect this article to be so big. So tune in tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow and I'll finish reading it for sure. But this is really good. It's a good article. Like, even though I was a bit nitpicky about certain things, I think it's a nice article. I think it's nice that a wider foreign audience that probably does not know much about this topic has had an opportunity to read about this. Oh, it's a bit sad that there are no comments here, to be honest. Oh, whatever. Lucy has that. That's my Discord name. Lucy has that, just like, and all right. I guess I'm gonna. We've mainly done this stream to talk to Counterpoints, so I'm gonna raid you into. Yeah, my name is Lucy Haza. Okay, I'm gonna raid you into someone now, and then I'm gonna go eat. Who's on? The Seraph's Kidnotkin. There you go, Kidnotkin. DM'd you. You have to add me to friends to be able to DM me. You have to add me to friends. I cannot get... I only receive DMs from people that are my buddies. Yep. Oh, I can see it. Hello. Now I will raid you to Kidnotkin, who will one day return the favor, hopefully. Alright, we'll see you. Bye-bye. Goodbye. Fare thee well. Bye-bye. What's the... Brown Stan. P.S. I know everything about Poland. We are all Brown Stan, that is true.